talking about the distribution shape, we need to mention one concept called skewness. So the skewness is measured by the following equations. So you don't need to worry about how to calculate the skewness because we will use the Excel to help us to calculate it. However, we want to put our attention on how can we build up the linkage between the value of the skewness and the shape of the distribution. So first, let's look at the first type of the distribution we call symmetric distribution. Do you remember in the chapter 2 when we covered the histogram and emphasized the type of the distribution? The first we mentioned is a symmetric distribution. And one typical example is our normal distribution. It's a symmetric distribution. So what's the relationship between the statistics and the distribution shape? So first I want to mention the value for the skewness is 0. And the second relationship between the statistic and the distribution shape is if the distribution is symmetric, we will have mean equal to median. And so let's look at this diagram. So what we found here is this distribution is symmetric. So we have here is the mean for the distribution. And where is the mean? So it's the highest place here. And where is the median? If you look at the horizontal axis, so the middle place is here, so you can find the mean equal to median. And so you should know if the distribution is symmetric, you should have the skewness equal to 0. At the same time, mean and median are equal. And so in another direction, if I'm telling you there is a distribution with the skewness equal to 0, you should immediately realize this distribution is a symmetric distribution. So let's look at this distribution. So we can find that this one is not symmetric because they have a tail towards the negative direction. So this part is like the animal's tail, and we call it the tail of the distribution. So the tail towards the negative direction, and sometimes we call it the negatively skewed, or here we call it moderately skewed left. And what characteristic for the negative skewed distribution? First, look at the value for skewness. So this is a negative number. The reason we call it moderately skewed because this number is not too far from, it's not very small negative number. So it's not only equal to negative 0.31. So it's a small, the absolute value of this number is small. And another characteristic of the statistic for this distribution is the mean will usually be less than the median. So first, the mean is located at here on the tail part. And how about the median? So in order to identify the median, you need to look at the horizontal axis and find the middle point. So it should be here. So it's very close to the peak here. So you will find the mean usually be less than the median. So which means if I give you a value, the skewness value equal to negative number, you should know this is a negatively skewed distribution. Or if I give you inequality that mean smaller than the median, you also should get the same conclusion that this distribution is negatively skewed or skewed left. So since we have the moderately skewed to the left, we should also have moderately skewed to the right. So how can we build up the links between the shape of the distribution and the statistics? So if we have the distribution moderately skewed to the right, and we should have first, skewness is positive. The second, the mean will usually be more than the median. So let's look at this example. So for this distribution, first you can identify the tail of this distribution is on this part. And so this is called skew right or positively skewed distribution. And at the same time, we calculated the skewness and we got a positive number. So when the skewness is positive and all the mean is larger than the median, we will have distribution skewed to the right, or we can call it a positively skewed distribution. So now, please compare this distribution with the one we just saw it. So let's look at this one. So this one have a very small tail. So this part, the tail didn't extend too long. How about the second one? So if we look at this one, we can find this distribution have a very long tail. And how can we link the degree of the tail with the shape of the tail with the statistics? First, you can see the tail towards a positive direction. So we should have the skewness equal to is larger than 0 because it's a positive skewed distribution. Since the second, we also need to have the mean is larger than the median because that is a characteristic for the positive skewed distribution. However, the difference between the picture we just saw and the picture showing up here is the tail. When we have a big and long tail, we usually have a larger skewness value. If we have the short tail, we usually have a smaller skewness. So you should remember, based on the value, the sign of the skewness, we can define whether they are symmetric, whether they are skewed right, whether they are skewed to the left. Based on the absolute value of the skewness, we can define whether they have the long tail or whether they have the short tail.